Oh, good. Hi, Skylar.
Hi.
And Rebecca, I'm just going to make you the host then so you can share at will.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and try to pull up the slides now just to make sure everything's.
If you're just joining us, if you would just add your name, if you teach, what school, your grade level, and if you're interested in receiving the First Makerspace newsletter, you can add your email address as well to the chat. And that'll just kind of help us get a quick introduction since we're supposed to have several people on. So that'll help make it a little quicker.
Is that okay?
That's working.
Okay, perfect.
And Rebecca, it looks like we've got one more to let in. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh, sorry.
You control that now.
You are right. Let me get that on.
Oh, maybe he just got in. Or if you want to make me a co-host, I didn't realize I would just.
Yeah, I'll admit, there we go. But yes, let me see how I can get that set up for you. Settings.
If you go back to participants and just click on more next to my name, you can add that. And I'm First Makerspace.
Oh.
Yeah. And then just make co-host. Perfect. Welcome, everybody. I think we're just about in a good place to get started. If you just joined us, we'll do our introductions here in a second, but if you wouldn't mind, put your name in the chat along with what school you teach at if you are an educator and what grade level. And if you're interested in receiving the First Makerspace newsletter, we do free PD once a month. So to learn more about that, if you just include your email address, I will add you to that list. And we will jump in here. Rebecca, I think whenever you're ready.
Sure. All right, awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully everything is transitioning smoothly with the Wi-Fi. I am at my hometown in Chicago right now on my iPad and my laptop. So thank you for your patience with that ahead of time. We are doing a PD on a really awesome application, if you aren't familiar, called Bloxels, but we'll start first just with some introductions. Amber, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Amber Hudson. I am the Education Director at First Makerspace. We are a small company out of Fishers, Indiana, and we build and design and sustain makerspaces across the state, across the Midwest, And so as part of that, as part of my role is to handle all of the professional development that happens within schools. Once they have all of their materials for a makerspace, I get the chance to go sit down with people like Skylar, who's on today, and just work one-on-one with them or with a staff to train them on how to use everything from Bloxels to paper circuits to robots. And so I have a fantastic job, and we were able to snatch Rebecca up because she is just an amazing educator and a Bloxels expert, and she's going to share with us her knowledge today. So go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, so like she said, I've worked with First Makerspace since my first year teaching. So I really like kind of working with them, and especially the Bloxels app that they offer. It's been a great resource for my classroom. I teach STEAM in Indianapolis to about 700 kids. I teach STEAM as a special, so I've definitely gotten a good chance to test it out, per se. But yeah, so my goal today really is to kind of give you the teacher perspective and give you hopefully a breakdown of how you can use this regardless of what age level you teach, regardless of what subject area. Just kind of give my expertise in how great it is as an engaging application. So we'll go ahead and move into it. So with the Bloxels package, if you were to purchase, this is kind of a visual of what it looks like. So inside the box, you're going to get 5 packs of what are called Bloxels, but it's kind of a fun way to first introduce the concept of digital art. So we talk about how pixels are just little blocks of color and they make an image. And that's kind of the concept of the whole thing. And kids kind of connect this with what they remember about maybe Minecraft or other video game making that they know of. You also get an educator handbook, which is fantastic. They've even updated this since I have purchased it. So I'm excited to see what they've added, as well as some features, things like how to tie it into each of your subject areas. So like I said, there's social studies, there's science, there's ELA, there's just creative writing, there's even a math tie-in. So they do a really good job of welcoming all areas and all subject areas and ages as well. So in terms of the specific classroom use, I would say this is ideal for grades 2 through 6. However, even as an adult, when I was kind of practicing this during quarantine last year, it's very entertaining. So you really could modify it or extend this to whatever age level you want your students to take it on with. It's ideal for probably grades 2 or 3 to 6, but it is fun for K through 8. Could you do it at high school level if you really wanted to? Probably. It can be taught with any subject area. They always align it to the computer science standards, which is great, as well as many other subject area standards, which we'll take a look at. It is an app that's free to download, so there's no worry with having to pay for district fees for that. You really only pay through First Makerspace for that package, that bundle, with the activation of your teacher account. So it's free to download on Android or Apple. And yeah, and also in the most recent release of our First Makerspace curriculum, it also aligns with the visual art standards. So we really tried to see how this can hit all areas possible. In terms of the purchase, I won't go too far into it because I want to just get to showing you the app itself and why it's so awesome. But that being said, you can get it through First Makerspace, either as a bundle or the pack itself. It can be online, it can be shipped. And I'm here to kind of help answer your questions to get you to that point, because I use it every year in my classroom and I have teachers using it as well in their own classrooms. All right, so let's talk about kind of how this breaks down. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you kind of a layout of what you would do to your students in the lesson format, but also I'll give you the teacher view as well. So this is just one challenge that we actually have in the curriculum, but you can really take this and modify it into whatever topic you want to bring it into. Bloxels is ultimately an app that allows students to recreate an idea or a problem to solve or just a challenge in a fun visual way. And it kind of takes the idea of video game making and makes it more adaptable without the need to code anything necessarily. They're still using critical thinking skills. They're still getting creative and collaborating, getting feedback. But for today specifically, we're going to kind of tap into the idea of building a fairy tale. And so what you might do is first have them identify what the problem is or what is the fairy tale they're trying to recreate or design. And then they'll go into a phase where they will brainstorm and explore kind of other games compared to their everyday life. So connecting past the classroom walls. And then eventually they'll move into the design phase. and prototyping phase. And then once they're finished with their game, the fun part is they can test it out themselves. They can get feedback from other people in the class arcade, and they can actually ultimately publish this game to be something that anyone in the world can play. So it's a really powerful motivator for students as they are working through this process. Some questions I know people had in the past, and I had when I first started, was how do you handle it with a bigger group? When you first tackle getting a Bloxels Educator account, it's only about 25 seats that they give you. You can, of course, add on more. But one suggestion I have, which I use with my kids, not only to help with that concept, but also to add in more of a challenge feature, is you'll see these studio name kind of like roles in a group. So you can have one person's the background designer, the layout designer. The other person gets to design their enemy. The other person gets to add in the script of the story. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of make this adapted to your classroom and your students based off groups or individual learners. And then next, so we go into the specific parts. So I kind of took screenshots of what the app looks like to give you a visual. I am going to give you all a chance at the end of this to try from the student perspective. So bear with me as we kind of work through just the steps with the visual screenshots, and then you'll get to kind of test it hands-on. But like I said, the first phase is just identify. So what is the problem? So your students would then go on to choose a partner, or maybe you set their groups for them, or they're working by themselves. Maybe they choose the fairy tale they want to recreate, or they choose their sequel that they're going to build off a current fairy tale.
How come you were barking?
And then, of course, you're going to join into that class. So you would have a class code that only those students can access. And they will go in. And this is kind of what it looks like from the educator perspective. So when students type in your class code, they see their name pop up. So they go, oh, Bersani, that's me. They tap it. They would make a password for themselves or with their partner, and then they have access to their account. You as the teacher, this is kind of what the educator hub would look like. So you see you have access to every single student's account. If you were to go into your, if you say student forgot their password, or you want to maybe lock a student's account for whatever reason that you might need to, you have full access. It's one of the things I like most about this app, is that you completely have access and control over everything. I know that gets kind of stressful when we're handing over something like this to students, but it is a really easy to use educator account. And then the next phase is they Brainstorm Explorer. So this is kind of a fun concept to get them thinking outside of the box. You don't have to do this phase by any means. In the past, I've done it though, because it really gets the students thinking in that higher level. What they do is they might go in, you'll see on the right, this screenshot is the arcade. So typically when you get the Bloxels app, even if you haven't paid for an educator account yet, students can play the arcade. For some teachers in my school, that's a huge downside, because the students love to get on it during their free time, which of course is, I have to apologize for in advance when I have my students use the app. But the arcade can also be really helpful. It's totally monitored by Bloxels, so all the games are appropriate. There's lots of different topics they can search. They can do a space theme, or look at just the most popular games. What I do is I have them look at these games. I'll say, hey, you have about 5 minutes. Go ahead and pick 2 games, play them a little bit. As you're playing them, think about what those games have in common or what are different about them. Compare and contrast, and also compare it to other games you have. So games at home that you play, board games you play, games you play on the playground. And what students are going to begin to realize is kind of those commonality components of what a game entails. Usually has some sort of main character, usually has some sort of task at hand to win, usually has some sort of challenge with it, you know, and then they can get into the nitty-gritty, which students love to do, of like, well, this game was more fun, or this one's more for babies, or, you know, they kind of get more critical, and they really enjoy that kind of pair share finding that they get to do, as well as look at the digital art piece, which is really helpful in the end when they're critiquing their own game. So then the next phase is the fun part. This is where they really get to dive in and make each component. So if you look at the top right, when they open up their student account, there's 4 categories that they're basically working on here. With their student account, they have the games category. That is where they can literally create multiple games or just one solid game, depending on what your challenge is. They have the characters section. So this is where they're obviously going to develop all of their characters, their main character, their enemies, anyone that's going to be like a role in that game. They also have the art feature. So this is where they can really get into the nitty-gritty of digital art, maybe your higher advanced students or higher level students could even get into some sort of shading, and you'll see that in the differences between artistic creations in here. And so those will be kind of the features of the game, things they'll collect, things they'll travel on or walk through to really make it visually appealing. And then of course the background. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So what I typically do is I would give them a layout of, hey, here's each 4 components. Today you're going to be working on the background, or tomorrow we're going to be working on the characters. So once they have their plan, whether it's written or they just talk about it, they have their design based off what their fairy tale will be. Then they're going to start building their game. And you can give them kind of a criteria to meet. So maybe with the younger ones, I would start pretty simple and say you need 1 or 2 characters, you need a background, and you just need your character to move. And maybe the goal of the game is just to get to the end, you know, so you can really change it up a little bit or have different levels for their older kids. Something we're going to talk about in a second is called the asset pack. So a challenge I had at first with my students was, you know, this is all fun and games until you realize how hard it actually is to create a pixelized character. They're so used to pen and paper or maybe other apps they've used, and that's kind of the fun of it. I think this really challenges their interpersonal skills of, you know, thinking outside the box, being okay with it not looking perfect. But for the students that they really want an added piece, asset packs are pre-designed characters and backgrounds and images that students can use in their game to make it look really jazzed up and like really high quality. So we'll look at that in a second here. And Amber, feel free to stop me if there are any questions or anything that's not playing up. Perfect. So we can look into the first step, right? So let's create the background. So when you create the background, this is exactly how it looks. They create a new background. And if you look at my 2 ones I've already made in this picture, you can clearly see, well, maybe clearly see, I don't know how artistically talented I am, the difference between one I made as a student and an asset pack. So for example, the one on the left that's labeled day, that's one I made. You can kind of tell because it's very drawn, you know, the kind of the spray paint style type art. The clouds one is one that was preloaded. You can tell it's very well shaded, looks more realistic. So that's kind of how it goes throughout the game. And you'll see more examples of art that I've created versus art that's in an asset pack. And you'll see that in a second.
I have a quick question, Rebecca, before you move on from there.
Yep.
When you say you created that day one yourself, are you doing it on the Pixel board? Or did you do that within the app?
And I'll go back real quick so we can see that briefly. So if you notice in the Bloxels pack, so they those white boxes, they give you 5 boards. And there's those little blocks of color. You have 2 options when students want to create anything in your game. If you really want those fine motor skills challenge and you really want them to kind of maybe take a break from the iPad to do a part of the designing, they can actually manipulate those colored blocks on that black little tray, we'll call it. And that can be their character. And what you do with the app is you would scan it and it uploads it to be a digital creature. So that's a really cool portion and cool thing for them to transfer and see. I don't know how, with my classroom specifically, I have so many students that we usually just use the iPad. So I wouldn't know how easy it is to transfer or how high the quality is yet.
Yeah.
But that is just another alternative, which is really nice. So you can either do it on the tray or you can do it just through the app itself on the touchscreen. Cool. All right, so moving on to the next part. So I kind of mentioned this before with asset packs. This is just another visual. You can see that you can preload some. So for example, for backgrounds, they have multiple different types. When you're in the Educator hub, I should say, you can kind of choose categories, and that's really fun, especially if you're going to have students creating their own stories, or specifically if you're having like one set topic. So maybe your lesson is, hey, I want you to recreate a part of history, but from a perspective of someone we haven't read about, or from the perspective of the Native Americans, or, you know, something like that, where you can really customize, like, well, we need the city skyline. No. So you can kind of preload whatever visuals you would like for them to use, or on the bottom right, they can create their own. Here's the character feature. So here's another example right here. You can clearly tell which one I have created and which ones were pre-loaded by the app, if you so choose. So they make their character. This is also a really fun challenge for students because they have to practice like ratios, which is a great opportunity to teach some vocab here. So they think so simply of making an eye and making it look more realistic, where really when they're getting down to creating their character, oftentimes it's going to look like mine, which is the villain, and it's just going to be 2 black dots, or maybe it'll be harder to create the smile like they wanted. So students really kind of humble themselves, but also have a really good time creating these characters because they're challenged to stay within the bounds of the grid, which you see when you create your character. So again, using those pixels to and artistic skills to really make characters and villains. This is kind of more specifically what it looks like. So when I talk about that grid, this is what students see. So this is one of those things, you know, where you want to kind of walk them through how to create. They can really take it up a notch and have the character look different when it's walking or jumping or falling. Or they can keep it very simple, especially for the younger ones, and have just one look, and that character will just move as is. The buttons, or I should say the images, are pretty easy to adapt to. As you can see, there's kind of some things that students are already familiar with. There's a copy and paste, there's an erase button. That camera up top is where Amber was referring to the grids, the hands-on pieces. So you can actually take a picture there with whatever you created on your physical board, and it'll upload it right to your screen. All right, so then we get into the game. Now, when we introduce this to students, it's really cool because if you look at this whole entire grid, this is actually just the complete broad spectrum of the game itself. So I like to tell students, think of each tiny box like a level of your game. So we'll look specifically at one level, and then you'll see we'll come back to the zoomed out version like this is. And that's where I really try to level up my higher level thinkers. And I think, okay, well, what if your character fell off? Fell into the darkness, you know, so they might make a level towards the bottom of this grid, or they have like an upper level that they can jetpack up to. So it really expands their thinking to create a really awesome game, or you can keep it pretty simple. All right, so let's talk about actual game making. So when you open up the game category and you're ready to create, it always starts you with this. The little ghosty looking guy is your main character. You can obviously go in and change him later to whatever character you want to be for your story. The green part is going to be the first base of where they walk. And then you see all of these color-coded blocks on the right. Now, I have kind of cheat codes. They give you this in your teacher handbook. I've also I've printed these before and put them out at each table. I've kind of gone over students with them, like, well, where do you normally, what's the terrain like in Fortnite, right? Or in Minecraft, what are some blue categories that'd be like slow to walk through, or purple is enemies? So they're basically color-coded categories of components of games. So you've got the green terrain to walk on, red would be hazards, things that cause you harm but can't move. Blue is anything that might slow you down or make you swim. Purple are those enemies. And Bloxels has really actually leveled this up. So the enemies can fly now, they can shoot fire, they can walk. So there's lots of ways to go into the details of that. Orange are action blocks, so things that you can pick up and throw, or that you can climb on top of to get to a different part of the game. Yellows are collectibles. So these are things like, typically you think of coins, or maybe hearts, or fish if you're doing a, you know, ocean themed game. And then pink are power ups. So these are anything from like giving a special power to a heart or a life, to a jetpack, to lots of different things. And my personal favorite, which really makes it reminds me of the days of the original Mario game, and it's the story blocks. So again, if you are an ELA or writing teacher, or really any teacher, this is something that really adds to the fun of the game. Students can add in these little white blocks called story blocks, and they can put a narrative. So you'll see an example of one I create later, but this is something where they can really tap into those ELA writing standards, or just really jazz up their game and give hints into what their player needs to do to win. So this is kind of what it looks like at first. And to the new person's eye, it might look kind of strange. It really is just blocks of color. You can test it out, make sure you like everything. But once you know that everything is in its place, so you'll see I have green that I can walk all over, jump on. There's some yellows in there. Those were collectibles, things I can collect. The purple boxes are those enemies. So when I press play, those are going to move, and I have to avoid them. So I want to first add in my character. So I kind of highlighted our character box. It gives us a chance to go create the hero pose, give background music for your game. and then I can change it to be more fitting. So maybe I'm making a story about a knight. I chose the background, and now he's ready to be in his game. So what you're going to see here is kind of what it looks like before you change each of those color-coded blocks into actual art. Now you can see in the bottom left, you'll see a story block. So again, this is a chance to kind of jazz up their game, kind of lead some drama in there that just says, well done, but your journey is not over, beware. So just some fun things there to add to the game. And then once we get into actually playing, this is, I kind of referred to this earlier. So remember we said how the game itself can have multiple levels. If you see in the center where those little tiny coded color blocks are, that was the level we just created here. So once they've created that one, they can say, oh, well, if you look at my top right, you know, my character is going to fall off into nothing. What could I add maybe below that's a secret new level? So they would go into this portion of the game, maybe drag their character or tap the grid box if they want to create that next part of their game into. It's kind of a hard thing to understand until you're tapping into it yourself, but I just wanted to show visuals to see how it can be jazzed up. All right, and then the last part that makes it fun. So this is the art. So this is where students really get into it and they make their game look like something high quality. So again, as you can see here, this category of the asset pack was called Castlemania, very fitting to my Knight in Shining Armor story. These are pre-made images that you can get in the Educator Hub, or you can have students access their own, and that's when they would click My Stuff. Regardless, they're going to add it into that bottom platform with all the plus signs. Anything they want to put in their game, they're going to tap and add there. Very easy to add as well. So very user-friendly for all ages. And then what they do is you can see I preloaded all of those art pieces. So I have some like turquoise blue stone at the bottom. I have some gems I want to collect. I have a skull, which is probably going to be an enemy. I have a little green blob, and that might be in there. And all they do is just tap that image and tap what they want to replace it with. So it'll turn into this and move to this. So a really cool transformation. It's one of my favorite parts. And this, you can tell, I mean, this goes from here's a designer, you know, prototype part to here's a real game that looks more realistic and more like something that they would like to play and improve. And then the last part is they do get to publish it. So typically what I have students do first is I have them go around the room, maybe switch teams and have each other play each other's games. We talk about constructive criticism. We talk about how even if it's not a game that you enjoy, what would make it better? And they kind of give feedback there to go and improve their game before they publish it. Now you can do a couple different things with this. You can either make it so they don't publish it and just don't tell them how to do it, or you can just publish it to their class arcade. So in the teacher hub, when you have your educator account, you have a classroom that you create with each of your student accounts. And when they publish it to the classroom, you can just keep it so just that classroom can play each other's games. But for my students, at least, they remember this lesson even when they're out of my classroom. And so I like to make it so that they can always come back and play their game without having to hold on to their student account so I can have other students use it. So what you can do is publish it to the web, quote unquote, which is really just the Bloxels app arcade. And then that way, no matter what, even if they don't have their student account anymore, they can come back and play this game and show it to their parents or guardians at home, friends, and things like that. So just to touch back, here are some of the computer science standards it hits. Like I said, they're not using JavaScript, they're not using coding language per se, but they are really doing a couple of key standards here that even aren't listed in this bullet pointed list. So they're using multimedia products to help them create their game. They're using partners, they're referring to feedback from teachers and friends. They're obviously using technology to solve whatever the problem at hand is. They have to follow a step-by-step manner. They're communicating their ideas and narrowing it down to one. Often the problem I have, I think, is that they have so many different characters they want in the game that I have to think, you know, okay, well, I challenge you to really narrow it down, or how could you combine the characters, or maybe make that character a villain. So it's just a lot of critical thinking that naturally evolves. And then of course, they're working with others, collaborating with their peers. And then here are just some of the ELA standards specifically in this concept of making a fairy tale. However, there are a lot of different ways you can tie it into other grade level ELA standards, as well as social studies, science, and a lot more. So this is kind of the last part of the session. I'd love to open up for questions and I can kind of help tap into it. I know it's a lot. If you feel like you are good, you are welcome to download the app. This is the class code right up here at the screen. And I tried to get everyone's name on the session, although we kept adding more participants, which is awesome. So if you don't see your name, you're welcome to tap into someone else's. You can create at the same time, or you can just kind of view what it looks like as far as you can get. So any questions or comments? I might be able to see. I might have to have Amber lead me just because I can't see the Zoom screens.
So yeah, just a couple things while you're downloading that app and logging in. If you choose to do that, if you have your or can add your email address to the chat, we'll make sure you get a recording of this video sent to you, as well as if you want to be included in the First Makerspace newsletter that shares our monthly free PD that we do, then this would be a great opportunity to get that information sent out to you. So we do have one question about what age group this is best for, Rebecca.
So it really depends on what you want them to create. I would think more as to kind of what.
We just lost your audio, so if you get a chance to say that again. She was worried about internet issues. If you can hear us, Rebecca, that would be great. Dara, I can kind of introduce or answer that question. Generally, we say that this is recommended for upper elementary into middle school, maybe even into high school. If you just want students to learn about the basics of pixels and, you know, creating a character on a tray, like getting it to look like a person, you could definitely do that piece as an unplugged activity with kindergarten, first grade, second grade. But understanding the reading components would be important as you get into the app. And Rebecca, I don't know if you can hear us, but we're going to have you go back to the slide with the student code. Oh, she's back in. Welcome back, Rebecca.
Sorry.
Could you go back to the student code again if you get a chance?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
It's currently up right now with the contact information.
Okay, so is it showing now the code? Is that what you wanted?
Yes, but I think it's still, I think you'll have to, because you're still logged in. I'm going to see if I can actually, you're still logged in as your other, like the last, there, oh, there we go. Okay. Now try.
Awesome. Okay, sorry about that. You will have to make the host again since they even come back. Oh, thank you, Christine, for putting that code in there.
Oh, good. Let's see. Make sure I get the right one of you. Okay, try now.
Okay, yep. And so here, and of course, you know, from the teacher perspective, I know sometimes PDs can be a lot, especially with an app like this. So I am happy to virtually meet with you one-on-one if you are wanting to add in this lesson to your classroom, and kind of walk you through how to use the app again or the educator hub and things like that. So you just need to let me know and I can put my email address in as well, which I'll do real quick, and then I will do that. Here is mine. If you need any help just with kind of the maneuvering of the teacher account, I will go ahead and pull this up. Which slide did you want to see?
It was just I think the last one they wanted was the student login code.
Oh, perfect. Which they got in the chat now.
We've got in the chat, yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Does anyone else have any questions at this time? What happens, Rebecca, if they don't see their name right now in the block or in the?
You know, I can you go in and add it. I know that some of you may hop into the student accounts and some might not. We have this trial account for about a week. So if you email me and say, hey, I'd really like to test out the student version, I don't see my name, I can just switch you out. Unfortunately, they only gave me so many trial spots, so I couldn't add everything. So if you just email me or you can pop in the chat, I can add you real quick, and then hopefully that will help. Can you share the link to send as a student? So you actually have to go to the Bloxels app. So you're going to download the Bloxels app, and then it's going to show you, I'll go back to the slide. So when you download the app, it's going to show you this. It'll be a little spot to click login. You'll do student login, you'll type in the class code, and then you'll be able to see all of the class accounts that have been made, and then you can click yours. So once you download the free Bloxels app, I can kind of help you navigate that. Amber, I believe that's a question for you in the chat.
Yep, I can send, if you are interested in PGP points, it would just be, I believe, one for this 1 hour session, but I can send you a certificate with that as well. So I see Eric's asking about that. I will add that to my list. If anybody else needs that too, just let me know. Is Bloxels web-based, Rebecca? Is there a web-based version of it?
I tried to find that out. I don't know if they're trying to make that way. For right now, no, it's strictly an app, which I think is better. It's better. It's a little more user-friendly and less glitchy. But I would check in with them. Their customer service is fantastic. They're very quick to reply. And one other thing too that I have to speak on it with a teacher perspective is, I have a Title I school. I have about 700 students and multiple per grade level. And so, when you first activate your account, they give you about 25 seats. If that's something that might not work for you, even if you do put in groups, they are really helpful about kind of maneuvering, adding in more class spots. It does cost money, but especially if you're Title I or if you have special funding or anything that might help that, they are very flexible on it. So it's a great company to work with.
On a side note, I do always like this option of having and hosting something through Eventbrite, but Paula is joining us from Spain. So I always think that's so cool. So welcome, Paula. Any other questions? I know that's a lot of information in a short period of time. Rebecca is fantastic about answering questions. So again, her email is in the chat. If you need additional help, I will add mine in as well. That way you have that. I'm always available to help. Or if you were interested in ordering Bloxels, that's kind of my side of that. So you're welcome to reach out with questions about Bloxels, or if you're interested in ordering something. Our catalog is online too at firstmakerspace.com. That's 1ST. And you can see all of the things that we do have available. And one last time, just in case you came in late, if you are interested in receiving our First Makerspace newsletter that shares our free monthly PD that we do every month, we kind of alternate between doing it virtually and doing it in person. So if you're not close to Indianapolis, that might be difficult. But if you are and are interested in getting more information about that or products that we have, feel free to put your email in the chat and I will add you to that list as well. Last chance for questions before we wrap this up. I know that I've been, as just in this role that I'm in now, I've had the opportunity to visit a number of schools. I've seen Bloxels used in some really cool ways as extensions to lessons that are already taught, whether that's language arts or social studies, math. Just it gives a whole new level of engagement to assignments that you probably already do. So just something to think about that's an added benefit to exposing your kids. And as Rebecca already mentioned, even to the arcade as well, just helping them understand a little bit better about what goes into game design. This is a great way to introduce that to them. So we appreciate your time today and look forward to doing this again. Next month, I believe our next month PD is in person, and that one is on paper circuits. So if you're interested in creating a paper circuit or learning more about that, that Eventbrite will be posted probably within this next week. So look for more information from First Makerspace if you're interested. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate all your time. Rebecca, thank you again. You're always a gem.
Always happy to help. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.